There are two common problems that occur. The spin motor can come out. I'm actually going to disconnect the two motors. I'm also going to take the belt. All you need to do is unscrew the water valve. Top motor is wash motor. The bottom motor is spin motor. The most common problem to fail on these machines are the gearboxes. Hi, welcome to How to Repair. Today we've got a twin tub washing machine, or in other parts of the world they're known as semi-automatic top loaders. Now this is a Chinese manufactured machine and I'm working in an extremely remote location. I'm actually in Morocco next to the Atlas Mountains. Now we've been making some videos on this machine down in the Sahara Desert, showing people how to use the machine economically when it comes to water consumption. But in this video I'm going to be showing you how to maintain the machine, how to change components, and also common problems that can occur with these machines. In this video on the timeline, you will actually find timestamps where you're able to jump through to the appropriate description or fault. Also, if you speak a different language, you want to go to the YouTube settings and you're able to change the subtitles and the captions to your appropriate language from wherever you are in the world. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about these machines. They're manufactured in China under multiple different brands across the world. They sell very well in Asia, India, and also the African market. This machine is actually a Denwa, and they may vary in their cosmetic look, but the mechanical components that are inside the machine and the functionality are all the same. This has a 15-minute wash timer. It has a gentle, a normal and an empty cycle, and it also has a spin unit. The spin unit also has a braking system on it. When it's running, if you open the lid, the motor will disconnect and the unit will actually slow down via a braking system. In this video, I'll be showing you how to maintain the machine, how to prolong the life of the machine, and how to replace every component on the machine. Okay, the first thing we're going to deal with is maintenance of the machine and how to prolong the life of the machine. Firstly, you need to be aware that this machine is all plastic. This means that sunlight will damage the plastic if it gets exposed to too much sunlight over a period of time. Make sure if you're storing the machine, you keep the machine covered, because plastic becomes very brittle if exposed to too much UV sunlight. When it comes to the wash functionality of this machine, there is a wash plate, sometimes known as an agitator or pulsator, at the bottom of the drum. This is designed to stir the water in one direction and then stir the water in the other direction, moving the clothing so it agitates correctly. Too much load in the machine will cause damage to the gearbox or the actual wash plate over a period of time. Make sure you fill the machine to the correct level of water. It is very important that you do have the correct amount of water in the machine, not only to get a good wash, but to make sure the load is taken off the wash plate and the gearbox. Do a little often is my rule of thumb. If you do this, the machine will last a long period of time. Make sure that you clean the filter system on a regular basis. And I suggest every 3-4 months it is worth doing a hot wash in the machine with a couple of dishwasher tablets, which will help dissolve all the slime and crud that builds up underneath the wash plate, and therefore it will empty out of the machine, keeping the machine nice and clean to do your washing in future. That's the wash side taken care of. Now when it comes to the controls, they're all pretty basic. Let them finish its cycle before actually stopping the machine. When it comes to the spinner, turn the spinner to the off position, open the inner and outer door, take out the mat and fill the spinner to about 1/2 to 3/4 maximum. Then put the mat on top and push it down firmly on top of the clothing. Make sure you try to distribute the clothing evenly inside the spinner. Shut the inner door, make sure it's locked, turn the top lid down and turn the spinner to the required time for spinning. If you want to finish the cycle early, turn the spinner off mechanically first, let the machine slow down till it stops, then open the doors. This will stop wear on the braking system, because if the machine is running and you open the door, you are using brake pad on the actual shaft to slow the machine down, and this will cause excess wear on the braking system over a period of time. Also, when it comes to the spinning side, if you hear the drum banging against the side of the cabinet, this means the load is not even or distributed correctly in the drum. Turn the machine off, let it stop, open up the door again, take the mat out and reposition the clothing so you get a more even spin. Put the mat back down and start again. Doing these things will prolong the life of the machine no end. When it comes to the empty, these are gravity-fed empty machines. If you do not maintain the machine regularly, it will build up with dirt in the pipework, and sometimes small buttons or other items can get lodged in the actual empty valve, and this will cause this pipe to leak constantly. Now, when it comes to working on these machines, the simplicity is actually very good when it comes to the tools that you require. As you all know, I'm a bit of a tool geek, because not only am I doing repairs on appliances, I have to look after the van and also the motorbike as well. You're going to need long shaft screwdriver, Phillips and plain. You're going to need a socket set, not any bigger than 17mm. You're going to need some grips, and you're also going to need some pliers, and I would recommend having some pin nose pliers. Of course, when it comes to electrical faults, you will need a multimeter. Okay, before I start stripping the machine down to show you how to change the individual components, let's go through the most common faults on these machines. Now, when it comes to the electrical system, you only have a timer for the wash side, a timer for the spinning side, and you have a micro switch for the actual emptying of the machine. This basically disconnects the motor action when you turn it to the wash cycle, and I'll demonstrate this for you. If you turn the machine on, the agitator at the bottom will rotate clockwise and anti-clockwise, but if you turned it to empty, you will still hear the timer ticking, but there will be no motor action. This is because there is a switch on the actual empty side to stop the agitation taking place. Turning it back on, the machine will start rotating again. When it comes to the spin side has two features. One, with the lid down, the spinner will come on and it will go into spin mode. If you open the door, it will disconnect the electrical supply and also put the braking system on. This is how the machine should be functioning. Now, when it comes to the wash cycle, there are two common problems that occur. You have the wash plate, sometimes known as the agitator or pulsator, and this rotates clockwise and anti-clockwise while the machine is running. You will see this turning at the bottom. Now, when there's no water in the machine, this may be turning, but if you actually use a pad and make sure you keep your fingers out of the way, you can lean down and put a little pressure on the inner part of the shaft. If you hear the gearbox grinding or the actual paddle stops rotating, then you either have a problem with one of two faults. The paddle itself has stripped the spline inside, meaning that the gearbox is unable to drive the paddle, or you have a problem with the gearbox itself. This should be rotating clockwise for a couple of seconds, then anti-clockwise for a couple of seconds. Another fault that may be occurring is you're turning the timer on. You can hear it clicking, but the actual pulsator is not turning, but you can also not hear the motor running, or you may be hearing a humming noise from the motor. It is possible that you either have a bad switch, or if you are hearing a humming sound, this could be because the capacitor on the motor has failed, and I'll be showing you that later in the video. Also note, when you turn the machine on, it needs to be on one of the two wash functions for the actual paddle to rotate. If the machine is on empty, it will not rotate the actual paddle. You may have a problem with the micro switch. Now when it comes to the spin system, you've only got a couple of faults that can occur. Firstly, you're turning the machine on, you're hearing a humming sound. This again could be a capacitor fault. It is possible that you turn the machine on and it's not getting to RPM. This could be a problem with a badly adjusted brake, a weak motor, or the actual load in the machine is incorrect. There is also a micro switch on the actual door unit which disconnects the motor completely and allows the braking system to come on. I'll show you all that as we strip the machine down. Okay, first things first, there is usually a wiring diagram on the back of these machines, and it includes the model number and also the serial number. Sometimes it's very difficult to obtain parts for these machines, and wherever you are in the world you will find a local dealer. We might not necessarily sell the parts because we're a UK based company. So removing the lead, you will find 3 screws. Remove these and make sure you keep all the screws in order as you dismantle the machine. The reason being, the threads on the screws will vary throughout the machine. Slide the plate down and then it will just unclip. This then exposes the pump switching gear. This just lifts up and down. You also have the brake system for the actual spinner, and a few of these items we're going to need to disconnect to take the base of the machine off. This will expose the capacitor, the 2 motors, and also the gearbox. If you need to work on the electrical switches at the top here, this will be later in the video. At the moment we're going to take the base off. Now I'm going to actually lift up the capacitor out of the housing and rest it down. I'm also going to lift up the electrical wiring connection block to make sure that's not connected. Also, down the bottom here, you will see some wires that are clipped onto the base. We need to remove these. For ease of working on the machine, I'm also going to take the belt off the actual motor and just rest that down. Now if you're wanting to work on the gearbox, of course you need to remove the wash paddle, agitator or pulsator, whichever you call it. Underneath the cap here you will find a screw. That is normally Phillips, or it's a combination of Phillips and plain screwdriver. Some machines it may be a nut. Just go down here, put the screwdriver in. You will need to hold the paddle because we've taken the belt off. Remove the screw completely. Once you've undone the screw, it might be an idea to use a hook screwdriver and just come underneath the plate and give it a pull. These are not necessarily easy to come off. Sometimes you will need to use some type of pullers. Also, I use hot water to pour onto the plastic when they're stuck, and I have done an additional video to assist you in different techniques for removing these wash plates, because on some occasions they are very difficult. Now that we've done all that, we can rotate the machine over. Now I'm lucky I've still got the original packaging for the machine, which is a perfect fit for the top. What I suggest you use is a good soft blanket to allow the machine to rotate over, and then you're able to tilt the machine upside down. Okay, for video purposes I'm actually going to disconnect the 2 motors. This means that the one motor that I took the belt off is going to drop down, so you'll need to support it from the underside. Now these are pretty straightforward. They have 10mm nuts on them, and you just need to undo. There's one locking one there, and then you have the main one. And I'm going to put my hand underneath so the motor doesn't fall down. And the nuts will drop as well. once they're all undone, you heard the bolts drop. You'll need to collect them in a second, but I'm just going to put these nuts safe. And now I'm going to undo the spinner. Now I'm going to undo the spinner, and this will also drop down, just supporting the spin motor on the other side. And that's the 3 screws that hold the spinner in place. Now I'm using a very long screwdriver here because it gives me the clearance, because if I had a handle it wouldn't go in. This is why I said you needed a long shaft screwdriver. There are about 10 screws around the base. Once you've removed all the screws, we only need to unclip the hose. These hoses are very flimsy, so do be careful. I don't have a lot of time for the Chinese when they actually put real cheap components like the fill hose and the waste hose. But this hose can go out either side of the machine. Now we're ready to lift the actual casing off, but be careful of the wiring because that can be disconnected completely from the electrical box. But as I'm just videoing, I'm going to rest it down here. This is the spin motor, and we also have the nuts, or sorry, the bolts that drop down, and also the belt. Just for reference, the belt on this machine is an 0670F, and that is usually the length of the belt and the design of the pitch. Okay, if you need to remove the gearbox, you can actually leave the pulley wheel on. You don't need to remove the nut and take the pulley wheel off, because you are able to put a screwdriver in and then remove the screws all the way around. I suggest undoing them and doing them up on an even basis. This stops anything coming out incorrectly. And when you're putting the new gearbox in, you will actually bring the gearbox down level by doing it alternate. Once you've undone the screws, remove them to keep them safe. You'll notice again the threads are different. This is why I said keep everything organised. Then this will pull up and the gearbox comes away. The most common problem to fail on these machines are the gearboxes, and I'm quickly going to explain not only what to look for when you've got a faulty gearbox, but also explain how they work. You have a motor on the actual machine that is driven by a belt that drives this pulley wheel. This pulley wheel rotates at a certain RPM. This then has a transfer ratio mechanism of approximately 3.5 to 1 up to 4.5 to 1. This then gives the actual wash plate, agitator or pulsator, whatever you call it, the power to actually turn the water in the machine and also agitate the clothing. The biggest problem that occurs with these gearboxes is people overload the machine, or they put things like trainers into the machine, and this catches on the actual wash plate. This then can cause the actual spline that this fits into, which you can see here if I bring it up to the camera, this can actually shear, or you can actually do damage to the cog systems inside the machine. The other problem that occurs with these is the seals wear over a period of time. You have an outer seal here. This actually stops water leaking from the machine, but you also have an inner seal. This seal sits on the shaft, and if the machine has got a lot of dirt that gets into the seal over a period of time, it allows water to go into the gearbox, and with the water goes dirt. This dirt then can wear the plastic cogs. You should have no movement really on the upwards and downside of the pulley wheel, otherwise you have a problem with the cog system inside. I've done another little video just to show you what's inside these, and that's available on our YouTube channel. But the biggest problems with these gearboxes is the seals failing or people overloading the machine and it strips the cogs inside because they are plastic. And the excess force can cause damage. The motor has usually got more power than the gearbox, so the motor does not slow down, it just strips the actual plastic cogs. It's also very good of the Chinese to put 2 mounting points for each of the screws. This means that if you ever strip the threads, you are able to attach the gearbox correctly to a new location. And I'm just going to line this up with the existing screws where they came out. And I'm going to drop this down, and now I'm able to replace the screws. Now when tightening these, it's a good idea to do them evenly. Just let the screw go down until it's nice, not tight, just firm. Then go to the other side and do this up. This way you're going to be putting pressure onto the seal evenly. Once you have all the screws nipped up, go back to each individual screw. It needs to be hand tight and quarter of a turn. Then go to the opposite side, go hand tight and quarter of a turn. Do not put too much force on it or you will strip the plastic. Hand tight and quarter of a turn. Last one, hand tight, and that is ready to reassemble. Okay, next we're going to have a look at the connection block, also the capacitor. Now do note, on a lot of new type machines now, they are using a dual capacitor. This means it's a single unit, but it actually powers both motors. In the old days, you would have an individual capacitor for each motor, but now for some unknown reason, they're fitting this, most probably to save money. Right, the 2 motors, the wash motor that we've got here, I'll just turn over so you can see it and just rest it on there. The top motor is an XD180 wash motor and it gives you the wiring configuration for testing. Also, the bottom motor is a YYG70-B spin motor. This is a 70 watt motor and it is driven with a 5 microfarad capacitor, and this is driven with a 12 microfarad capacitor. This capacitor does both. As it's stated on the side of the capacitor, 12 plus 5 UF plus or minus 5%. Now the connection block, there is actually a hidden fuse in here that is in line with the plug. And I'll just quickly show you this because we have to actually open up the block to test the capacitor. I'm not going to test the motors in this video because they will vary on each individual semi-automatic top loader or twin tub, depending on the drum capacity. They may fit different size motors. But as you can see, here is the inline fuse. And if I just unscrew that, just to quickly show you how to test it, that is going to the control panel, that is going to the plug. And if I put my meter up here for you, set it to continuity, you can just put one end on the fuse and on the other side we can test. And of course it's a new machine, so we have continuity on that fuse, which means it's all good. But just in case anyone wanted to test that and they didn't know about it. Now, when it comes to the motor, you do have the wiring configurations, and I will put the wiring configurations up on the screen for you now so you can see, and I'll put both labels. The wash motor is a 180 watt motor, and it's driven by a 12 microfarad capacitor. Now, if I change my meter over to testing capacitors, and I've set it to 20 UF, it's telling me that the capacitor sits on the yellow and red wire. And if I go back to my electrical block here and I look for red and also the yellow, we can see thereabouts we have a capacitor that's reading 11.25. Don't forget, this meter is not calibrated and the motors haven't been used in a while, so they might be slightly discharged, but that is telling me it's a good capacitor. Now if I look at the spin motor, it's telling me it's a 5 microfarad capacitor, and the capacitor sits on the grey and white wire. So if you go to the white wire, slot that down in there, and I find the grey, you can see again just under 5. We've got a reading of 4.58, so we know the capacitor is good. Now the problem being is if the capacitor has failed on one side, it means you have to replace the whole capacitor for both motors. You would be able to wire up 2 individual capacitors. On the red yellow, you would be able to put a 12 microfarad capacitor, and on the grey white you would be able to put a 5 microfarad capacitor, in case you can't get hold of the actual dual unit. Hope that helps you there. That's the 2 motors taken care of. Now we'll reassemble the machine. I will show you the water valve in a minute with regards to the emptying, but I'll wait till I reassemble to show you that. Okay, while I've got the base of the machine off, because it's going to be easier to actually show you this, I'm going to take the spin motor off the actual spin drum. And you're going to need a spanner to loosen the locking nut. And I'm just lifting this up, putting it on, loosened that one. If I rotate it round, there is another one on the other side, and I have no idea why they keep changing the sizes on these things. So if I get a spanner on that one and just loosen that, then I'm able to lift it up, rotate it round, and I will be able to loosen the actual bolt, rotate it round again to the other side, and I will be able to loosen that, and it should drop away. And there we go. Then the spin motor can come out. Now, the reason I said about the lid shutting on the spin side, if you look at the braking system here, it is very, very flimsy pad. It actually looks more like cork than a brake pad. And what actually happens is when the lid is lifted, this then is pressing onto the actual shaft. And this is what slows the machine down so that you can open. Just thought I'd show you that. There is a seal here, but you will need to remove the drum to change this seal unit. This will stop any water from the spinner going into the actual machine. Okay, the first thing we want to do is reassemble the machine, and this is quite tricky, especially when you're working on your own. You'll need to get the mounts ready and the bolts, and I suggest keeping the actual base of the machine here, then lifting up the main wash motor and just getting the one pad under, drop down the bolt, and then on the other side just get the bolt on, which is easier said than done. Then do the next one. And then the next one. Now don't tighten it up until you know it's all in right location. The spin motor I have got loose on the shaft, and I've also got the mountings loose as well, because you need to line these up with the pinholes on each mounting plate. So now the motor's on there, I can lean that over, make sure everything lines up correctly, Okay, the next thing we need to do is actually line up the spin motor. Now these mounting points actually have to come through in the correct location, and they are quite tricky. Can you see the two plastic things here? Get one in place, then drop the screw on, and just don't go tight, just get it so that those location lugs don't fall away. Then we can do the next one, which is at the back. Lifting up the motor, making sure it lines up. Can you see the two lugs? And that's in place. Then going on to the other side. And that's all done. Now if we need to do any adjustment, I've left the wash motor slightly loose because I am going to align this with the pulley wheel on the gearbox. Okay, now this is all done, just make sure the plastic is fitting correctly to the actual base. Sometimes it doesn't go down correctly. Okay, now that's done, just carefully put the pipe either side that you require. And now we're ready to roll over the machine, align up the actual main motor, put the belt on, and then we'll start working on the top. Once you know everything's lined up, just make sure you tighten all the screws on the actual mounts at the top, then do up the motor, and then we need to insert the belt. Now insert the wiring into the correct locations. Okay, I just wanted to show you the braking system with the cable, and this is the adjustment point that you can see here. When I open the lid, you'll see the brake go on, and the brake is touching the shaft, and therefore it can't turn. When I lower the lid, the brake comes off, and now the drum turns freely. If you need any adjustment, you adjust it here, but you may need to put a new pad on if you've worn it out. Now, if your drain pipe is constantly leaking, you may have some debris actually in the water valve. All you need to do is unscrew the water valve. This is controlled by the switch at the top. Lift it out, give it a good clean, and you can already see some fluff building up on this. Have a look down in the pipe and make sure there's no small buttons or anything jamming it. You can also inspect the diaphragm for any holes. Then just drop it back down. Make sure you don't cross thread it. Hand tight and quarter of a turn. Last, make sure you fit the actual wash paddle, wash plate, do up the screw. Make sure you do it quite tight, and then put the cap back on. Now I'm quickly going to show you the electrics. Okay, to gain access to the electrics, you need to undo these 3 screws, but you also need really to undo the valve here. Just to release the actual cord, it is going to be easier to get the actual top off. But you have to be very careful getting this off. The plastic is extremely brittle. I know what I'm doing, and I can promise you, unless you take your time, you will do damage to the plastic. They're not really that well built when it comes to the lid system. Okay, once you've undone that, lift the lid up. You'll need to wriggle this and just move it sideways, and then it should come away. The reason I said to release the actual pump is because this would be pulling on the electrics. Now let me just clip that there for you. Okay, first thing I'd like to show you is I've put a screw in here just to support the panel. This is the actual fill hose for the machine, but for some unknown reason the manufacturer has left this blanked for the rinsing, and I do not know why. Maybe it's because of this very poor micro switch that they fitted. In the UK, I can tell you this would not pass quality control. When you open the lid, it becomes open circuit on the contacts. When you shut the lid, it becomes a circuit. This can easily be tested with a multimeter. While it's shut, just go across and you can see continuity on the meter. When it's open, of course, that switch will be open circuit. This then is controlled by the spin timer. The spin timer on this machine is 5 minutes, and I'll do some close-up videos to put in the side frame here of the actual mechanism. On this switch, there is only one set of contacts, and this is only to turn the spinner on for the required amount of time. You can see it clicking away, and once it got to 0 on the time, it will go open circuit on the contacts, turning the motor off. Straightforward and simple. The switch in the middle, as you saw at the beginning of the video, basically is for the 2 wash functions and also to turn the agitator or wash plate off when the machine is emptying. And that can easily be tested, but nothing is visible on here. The next switch is a switch which controls the rotation of the wash paddle. And if you look in here, you can see 3 sets of contacts. And I will put both of these switches up in the side window so you can see in detail with power on them. Now, although it's very low ampage on this machine, the total capacity of the machine is no more than 5 amp. The main motor is 180 watt and the spin motor is 70 watt. So it is very low ampage, but I would expect a little bit better quality when it comes to these switches. I can see them failing over a period of time. Now, if you watch this timer closely and I turn it on for a few minutes, you'll see different switches opening and different switches shutting. This is to send the power in a different direction to the motor, so the wash paddle goes one way, it then stops, and then the wash paddle goes the other way. Very straightforward, but the build quality on all these pieces are not what I expected. It is very poor, I'm sorry to say. But when the unit only cost £100, well, I'm not going to say any more than that. And the reason I actually disconnected the water valve at the bottom was so I didn't do any damage to the actual switch here. And there you go. A very basic machine. If looked after, it might last quite a few years, but I will expect you to have problems with the actual gearbox assembly. I would expect this to cause a problem over a period of time, and one of these switches may fail over the course of 4 to 5 years, depending on how much use. I don't expect the motors to fail unless they got wet. The capacitor does look like it may fail, but in general it's not a bad machine for the money, just the build quality could have been a bit better. I hope you enjoyed this video. There are other videos to go with this video with regards stuck wash paddles, how to use the machine efficiently with water, and all the basic functions of the machine. And I'll be doing other videos on different top-loading washing machines over the course of the next few months. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Please remember to give the video the thumbs up, and if we really helped you, you can always donate to the website by clicking on the Buy Paul a Beer page. And if you're from an Arabic country, I do apologise, we will put a coffee button on there as well. Thanks very much indeed for watching.